originally from Arkansas, and I was born and raised there. I came to Arizona in '98 for vacation with my mom. Absolutely fell in love with it. So I went back home, chose a date, which was like 6 months later, and said I'm moving to Arizona. So in August, I packed my car, drove across country where I didn't know one person, didn't have a job, and didn't have a place to live, and figured it out. Because I decided this was the next stage of my life. I then became a civil rights and social justice advocate. So I traveled all over Arizona, working with different communities on social justice issues and also civil rights issues, even sometimes that had nothing to do with me, but I saw either the commonality or I just felt that other communities needed support of communities that may not be affected. I then went to law school. The reason why I went to law school, just a little tidbit, is I had a meeting with our Pios people and for a civil rights case, and it was in the jail, and number one, they said, we're not going to, we were just chatting, and they said, we don't like to accommodate in the jail for people who practice Wicca. And I said, why? And they said, because that's not a religion. And I said, no, not your job. Your job is not to decide what a religion is. The U.S. law says if one person sincerely believes it, it's a religion. Your job is to decide if you can accommodate it. So you need to stay in your lane. Then we talked about the civil rights case I was there for. And I had the federal law, the state law. It was covered in the Arizona Constitution. I had every policy for every jail and prison in Arizona that accommodated it. And they said, I'm sorry, you're confused. It's not that we don't understand the law, it's that we're not going to follow it. And if you don't like it, you can sue. And so I immediately took the case to the ACLU and then went to my husband and said, yeah, I think I need to go to law school. I'm actually hearing this excuse a lot, not just from government, but especially from school systems and from employers. So I went to law school. I opened up my own law firm. I practiced immigration and estate planning. So I got them coming and going. And then last year, I really looked around and became very upset. I became upset because I had worked 15 years in civil rights and social justice and felt like we had come so far. I saw what my mom had fought for. I saw the remnants of what my grandmother fought for. Obviously, I wasn't around. But what I saw was not only from the presidential side, I mean, it was from that race that communities were being thrown under the bus. Women were being incredibly disrespected in a way that in my lifetime I had never seen. And it was bad enough that it was happening, but then it was filtering down into the lower elections. Other elected leaders and other candidates were repeating this rhetoric because they saw it as politically effective. But what was even more concerning than that was that their colleagues were not holding them accountable. Their colleagues weren't speaking out and saying, no. These are your constituents. These are my constituents. You don't get to talk about our communities this way. So I turned to my husband and I said, I need to close my law firm. And he said, okay, why? I said, I got to be a part of this conversation. I can bring these conversations. Two things that I'm good at in life is holding politicians accountable and having difficult conversations. I'm good at these two things. And he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I don't have a clue, but it's going to be big. It has to be big. Because just going back into civil rights and social justice is not going to be enough for me. I've got to get out and take this by the horns, bring that ugliness so we can face it as a society, as a country, and say, is this us? Yes or no? So I decided I would run for office. I'd been told many times that I could run for office or I should run for office, and I'd always said, yeah, it's not my bag. I'm good at holding elected leaders accountable. But I'd also always told communities that I worked with that there's one thing to hold organizations accountable from the outside, but you also have to get into the organization and change the culture from the inside. And I thought, well, maybe I should take my own advice. So I decided that I would run for office, and then I decided that this is the office that I would run for, because I could have the biggest impact, I could cover the most ground in Arizona, and there would be nobody that would work harder for this office than me. And since I announced in April, I've had 1 to 6 events per day. I've taken 20 days off to see my husband. That's what I felt that leadership requires, that I felt that actually getting out and talking to people required. requires. And when I heard our elected leaders, which was another thing that upset me, that they wouldn't have town halls and that they wouldn't meet with constituents because they said that the progressives or the liberals were not, they wouldn't have civil discourse, they wouldn't be polite, they were out of control. I faced down white supremacists right here in Phoenix. If I can face down white supremacists, then you as an elected leader that gets my tax dollars every year, you can face the liberals. You can go to my website. It's www.deedra2018.com. You can see lots of my platform issues. But the four that I talk about the most, number one, healthcare. We have to fix the ACA. That's what we have to do now because people rely on it today. And there are parts that aren't working. But we have to make a commitment that we are going to have health care for all, and it's non-negotiable. Every industrialized country in the world has managed to figure it out. You cannot tell me the country that took the Magna Carta and created the great experiment of the U.S. Constitution, that we suddenly can't figure out how to do something that every single industrialized country has figured out how to do, including Eastern Europe, who hasn't even been free that long. An unhealthy society is an unproductive society. If we're dead, we can't work and we can't progress to the future, and we definitely cannot compete globally or locally. Number two is education. Education is an infrastructure issue. Just like we need roads and we need bridges and we need internet, we need these things to prosper locally. We need these things to compete globally. Education is such a foundational issue that this country was the first country in the world that made sure that everybody had a minimum education. Every single person for free. We did that. We did that, and that's what got us where we are today. Now we're defunding it, deliberately making it inaccessible and not quality. And what is that going to do? That's going to cause us to be a country that doesn't even know how to run itself, much less progress into the future. Number three. I got 8 minutes. I'm timing. I'm on 8 minutes. I got 2 minutes left.
All right.
I always time. I'm an attorney. I respect your time. So number three, separation of religion and state. This is the most fundamental thing that we've got to have. Nobody's talking about it. We cannot have religious liberty unless everybody has religious liberty, including people who don't want to have religion and definitely don't want their government defining God's relationship with them. Every attack on women's rights, every attack on the LGBTQ community is based on religion having this unholy marriage with state. They need a divorce very quickly. And if there's a wall that we need, that's the wall that we need. And number four is net neutrality. Nobody's talking about it. This is about your freedom, guys. If you think that fake news is a problem, not having news that you want to choose is the problem. We cannot have the internet divided into like cable, where depending on what package you buy, how much you're willing to buy your packages for, determines what information you get. And we also cannot have that this corporation's relationship with this corporation's relationship decides what information you get. Because the moment that we can't get every bit of information that we want to get, we're not free. And the last thing I'll leave you with is we are the Democratic Party, and we forget to tell people what we stand for. We are the Freedom Party. We really are. We need to take that shit back. Sorry. We are the Liberty Party. We actually do believe in liberty. We believe that everybody should have it. Not liberty for me, liberty for everybody. We believe that you should be paid appropriately for the job that you do. We believe that women should be able to have contraception, make personal decisions on their life, their economy, their body, their sex life. We believe those things. We fight for those things. That's freedom. We are the Freedom Party. But we forget to put it in that language.